Hello Miss Rosa and everyone, I'm Kamelia Sari. Now I'm going to discuss about the Great Gatsby along with its issue. The Great Gatsby is a 1925 novel written by an American author, Fitzgerald, that follows a cast of characters living in the fictional towns of West Egg and East Egg on the prosperous Long Island in the summer of 1922. Many literary critics consider that The Great Gatsby is one of the greatest novels ever written. Before going to discuss about the issue of this novel, I'm going to tell about the synopsis first. This book is based on the Nick Carraway's perspective, or it is based on Nick Carraway's point of view. Nick Carraway moves to the East Coast to work as a bond trader in Manhattan. He rents a small house in West Egg, and then in East Egg, the next town over, where old money people live. Nick reconnects with his cousin Daisy Buchanan, whom her husband is Tom, and meets their friend Jordan Baker. Tom takes Nick to meet his mistress, Myrtle Wilson, and then Myrtle is married to George Wilson, who runs a gas station in gross and dirty neighborhood in Queens. Tom, Nick, and Myrtle go to Manhattan, where she hosts a small party that ends up with Tom punching her in the face. Nick meets his next neighborhood, Great Gatsby, who is a very rich man who lives in a giant mansion and throws wildly extravagant parties every weekend. Jay Gatsby is a mysterious person that no one knows much about. Gatsby takes Nick to lunch and introduces him to his business partner, a gangster named Mayor Welsham. Nick starts a relationship with Jordan, and through her, Nick finds out that Gatsby and Daisy were in love 5 years ago, and that Gatsby would like to see her again. Nick arranges for Daisy to come over to his house so that Gatsby can accidentally drop by. Daisy and Gatsby start having an affair. Tom and Daisy come to one of Gatsby's parties, and Daisy is disgusted by the ostentatiously vulgar display of wealth, and Tom immediately sees that Gatsby's money mostly comes from crime. From the history, we learn that Gatsby was born into a poor farming family as James Gatz. He has always been extremely ambitious, creating the J. Gatsby person as a way of transforming himself into a successful self-made man, or the ideal of American dream. Nick, Gatsby, Daisy, and Tom get together for lunch. At this lunch, Daisy and Gatsby are planning to tell Tom that she is leaving Tom. Gatsby suddenly feels uncomfortable doing this in Tom's house, and then Daisy suggests going to Manhattan instead. In Manhattan, the five of them get a suite at the Plaza, so hotel where many secrets come out. Gatsby reveals that Daisy is in love with him. Tom in turn reveals that Gatsby is a bootlegger and is probably engaged in other criminal activities as well. Gatsby demands that Daisy renounce Tom entirely and say that she has never loved him. Daisy can't bring herself to say this because it isn't true. Crushing Gatsby's dream and obsession, it's clear that the relationship is over between Daisy and Gatsby. That's why Daisy chose Tom to be with her. In that evening, Daisy and Gatsby drive home in car, with Daisy behind the wheel. When they drive by the Wilson gas station, Myrtle to the car because she thinks that Tom driving by. Daisy hits and kills her, driving off without stopping. Nick, Jordan, and Tom investigate the accident. Tom tells George Wilson that the car that struck Myrtle belongs to Gatsby, and George decides that Gatsby must also be Myrtle's lover. That night, Gatsby decides to take the blame for the accident. He is still waiting for Daisy to change her mind and come back to him, but she and Tom skip town the next day. Nick breaks up with Jordan because she is completely unconcerned about Myrtle's death. Gatsby tells Nick some of his story. As an officer in the army, he met and fell in love with Daisy, but after a month had to ship out to fight in World War I. 2 years later, before he could get calm, Daisy married to Tom. Gatsby has been obsessed with getting Daisy back since he shipped out to fight 5 years later. The next day, George Wilson shoots and kills Gatsby and then himself. The police leave the Buchanans and Myrtle's affair out of report on the murder-suicide. Nick tries to find out people who can come to Gatsby's funeral, but everyone who pretended to be Gatsby's friend and came to his parties now refuses to come. Even Gatsby's partner, Walsham, doesn't want to go to the funeral. Walsham explains that he first gave Gatsby a job after World War I and that they have been partners in many illegal activities together. Gatsby's father comes to the funeral from Minnesota. He shows Nick a self-improvement that Gatsby had written for himself as a boy. The issue that I'm going to discuss in this story is the American Dream. Through his novel, Fitzgerald conveys that the American dream cannot be fully attained because those who believe in it are constantly striving for something better than themselves. He demonstrates that it is dangerous for one to reach for something more than what is given and expressed. The idea that if people become so involved in materialistic things, they are not guaranteed happiness. Gatsby's desire to achieve more than he had ultimately led to his downfall, demonstrating that infinite success is not possible, as portrayed in the stock market crash preceding the Great Depression. The American dream in 1920s is still alive in America today. Fitzgerald demonstrates that because the American dream is the continuous desire for better, it is impossible to fully grasp. Fitzgerald illustrates that society in the 1920s was becoming more insensitive and corrupt, foreshadowing a halt to America's prosperity. The Great Depression that hit America in the late 1920s clearly demonstrates that constantly reaching for more than what is given will eventually lead to the destruction, as shown by the fall of Gatsby and the Great Depression that followed the Wall Street crash of 1929. Fitzgerald suggests that rather than reaching for materialism, one should focus on more important things such as a relationship that will bring true happiness. So that's all about the discussion of the Great Gatsby. Thank you for watching and see ya!